The film begins with a terrified young boy racing through the forest wearing a yellow jacket. He's too afraid to look back, desperately looking for a hiding place. But he eventually collapses to his knees, overcome with despair. He holds back tears as he recalls the horrific events of today. Meanwhile, 5 teenagers, Queenie, the straight-A student, Carl, the know-it-all, Reggie, the troublemaker, Bess, the beauty, and Nolan, the boy secretly in love with her, travel on a field trip in an old school bus driven by Joe, a gentle, elderly driver. During the ride, they learn that tonight's lunar eclipse can be seen without a telescope. Joe wonders if anyone will watch, but the teenagers dismiss it. Their minds are preoccupied with the usual teenage dramas and worries. Reggie urges Joe to accelerate, but the old red bus can barely keep up and appears to be on the verge of breaking down. Carl attempts to engage his classmates with a riddle, but it is too simple, and Queenie solves it before he even finishes, irritating him. Joe, hoping to keep them entertained, offers a more difficult riddle, one they won't find online. My name is 7 letters long, and I'm not easy to find. Monsters, wows, and dragons cannot tame me, and even bare hands will not break me. Think hard right now. Without me, virtue and courage are just empty words. I am what provides strength to the Golden King of Beasts. So who am I? The group falls silent, each of them stumped and unable to predict the answer. The bus suddenly comes to a halt. A tree has fallen and blocked the road. Joe decides not to turn back, instead taking a detour down a remote road, unaware that a corpse is hidden beneath some nearby branches. They come to a halt again after a few kilometers when they notice a dead deer on the road. Joe requests that the teens stay inside while he drags the animal off the road, assuming it was hit by a car. But as he moves the deer, Joe senses he is not alone. Moments later, he returns to the bus, but he is not alone. An escaped convict named Pedro Mella, who was hiding in the forest, now holds Joe at gunpoint and forces his way onto the bus, threatening to kidnap the teens. Joe tries to reassure them, but Pedro's menacing presence highlights the danger. He instructs Queenie to switch seats, taking her place in front to keep a close eye on Joe, whom he now forces to drive. Pedro warns Joe that if he does not follow his instructions, he will begin shooting, putting everyone on board in grave danger. Carl recognizes Pedro right away. He is the fugitive who has been making headlines. Carl was having lunch with his father just before the trip, telling exaggerated stories about his own bravery, when a news flash about Pedro Mella, a notorious criminal known for his hatred of children, appeared on the screen. Carl's father, a police officer, had been looking for Pedro for days and assured his son that he had nothing to worry about. Carl realizes they're confronted with a violent criminal who appears unlikely to let any of them go. Joe continues to follow Pedro's orders, driving late into the evening. Pedro, fearing that the teens' parents will panic if they can't reach them, orders everyone to throw their phones out the window, cutting off any possible tracking. Reggie resists, attempting to demonstrate courage, but Joe quietly pleads with him to cooperate and not provoke Pedro, who is armed and dangerous. Reggie reluctantly gives up his phone, knowing that it will most likely seal their fate. Joe drives on, concerned for the children's safety, and fails to notice a fallen road sign warning of an upcoming restricted military area. As they proceed, Nolan and Reggie quietly plot to confront Pedro and seize the gun. They're hoping this is their chance, but Bess quickly warns them about the dangers of such an attempt. Pedro, sensing their anxiety, reminds them that he is not to be underestimated. Eventually, the bus enters a dark, ominous tunnel and breaks down unexpectedly. Pedro accuses Joe of sabotaging their escape and threatens him with a gun, but Joe is unable to restart the bus. Pedro uses Queenie as leverage and orders Joe to inspect the engine. Though Joe can't see what's causing the problem, let alone how to fix it, he goes outside. Suddenly, the tunnel lights flicker out, leaving them in almost complete darkness. Only faint headlights illuminate the road ahead, casting eerie shadows into the darkness. During the unsettling silence, Joe and Pedro notice a strange figure sitting in the middle of the road. Pedro, increasingly paranoid, orders Joe to approach and confront it. The teenagers watch in horror as Joe, the only adult they can rely on, approaches this mysterious figure with fear and dread in his eyes. He approaches, but as he gets closer, he realizes it isn't a person at all, but a creature. It attacks, killing Joe in an instant. The teenagers' world is shattered. Joe was their last hope, and now he is gone. Pedro is equally shaken, clutching his gun and hurrying back into the bus. He slams the door shut and tells the kids to stay in their seats. Pedro, desperate to escape, realizes Joe has the keys, trapping them all. Furious, he orders Carl to get the keys, but Nolan offers to go instead. However, before he can, Bess unexpectedly steps up and bravely volunteers herself. Bess moves with extreme caution, retrieving the keys and taking in the horrific scene. She notices that Joe died from a vicious bite and notices that the creature recoils from light, as if terrified of it. Back inside, Bess hands Pedro the keys and shares the devastating news about Joe. Pedro shoves his gun to Reggie's head, forcing him to start the bus. Reggie, terrified, tries his hardest but is unable to get it running. Nolan and Reggie sees a rare opportunity, rushing Pedro and taking the gun from him. However, Pedro simply laughs coldly, daring them to pull the trigger. Just then, a sinister scraping sound fills the bus, indicating that the creature has moved to the roof. Its weight causes the metal to groan. Pedro, distracted, takes back the gun. Clearly desperate, he storms out, determined to confront the creature head-on. The teenagers, wide-eyed, watch Pedro step into the darkness, gun drawn and firing wildly. The eerie echoes of his gunshots fill the tunnel, growing fainter by the second. As they sit there, trapped and horrified, a terrifying realization dawns on them. They are trapped in a nightmare with no way out, pitted against a ruthless, unstable criminal and a monster hiding in the shadows. A few moments later, they see the monster closing in on Pedro, attacking with brutal force and sinking its teeth into his head. The creature, a monstrous insect-like beast with coarse hair and jagged teeth, looms just outside the window, terrifying the children. Reggie tries unsuccessfully to restart the bus, causing panic. Hope is fading, and he believes they're all doomed. Nolan snaps at him, shaking off his fear. Now is not the time to give up. We need to stick together. A few minutes later, they hear the monster wreaking havoc on the bus's wiring. It cracks open the back door and squeezes inside. The teenagers scramble to escape, but the front door is jammed shut. The monster is getting closer, but Bess buys them some time by shining a flashlight directly in its face. Nolan stays behind, attempting to keep the creature at bay, while the others force open the door and escape. The 5 teenagers dash into an underground maze, closing every door behind them as they flee, hoping the monster will be unable to track them. They soon realize they are lost and have no way out. As they navigate the tunnels, they come across a room with a map and floor plan of an old military base. Knowing the creature is light sensitive, Queenie suggests they go to the control center and turn on the generator. Nolan examines the map, attempting to determine the best path, while the group takes a moment to remember Joe. Reggie is the hardest hit by the loss. Joe was his father's best friend and was wrongfully imprisoned. After a tense pause, Nolan decides they should make a run for the main generator. The group agrees that he and Bess should leave, while the others remain hidden. As Nolan and Bess make their way through the maze, they become closer and find comfort in each other's presence. Nolan is open about his feelings for her, and it appears that she feels the same way. They soon discover a strange device that resembles a chair covered in lights and lamps. They realize someone attempted to fight the monster, but the evidence is grim. A skeleton nearby confirms that the person lost their battle against the creature lurking in the darkness. Meanwhile, Queenie asks Reggie to walk her to the bathroom because she is too afraid to go alone. He reluctantly agrees, giving her some privacy while also expressing his desire to confess his feelings. Before he can say anything, he turns around and sees she's gone. Panicked, he rushes back to Carl and informs him that Queenie has been captured by the monster. Armed with torches, the two set out to find her. They find her in the monster's clutches, but a quick burst of fire chases the creature away. They save her just in time, but Queenie is severely injured and on the verge of unconsciousness. Carl helps her walk, but just as they're about to return, the monster grabs Reggie. Now it is up to Queenie and Carl to save him. Reggie struggles desperately, but the creature is too powerful. He's about to give up when a miracle occurs. Back in the tunnels, Nolan and Bess discover photos, journals, and drawings from a person obsessed with destroying the monster. They also find and start the main generator. The lights flood the maze, causing the monster to flee. Reggie is saved, but as they go deeper, Nolan and Bess come across a book that reveals the identity of the person who had previously declared war on the creature. Just as they're putting it all together, terrifying noises reverberate through the corridors. They brace themselves for another attack, fearing the worst, but are relieved to find it's their friends. The 5 teenagers regroup and return to the former command center for the monster hunt. They find out that the man who declared war on the creature was Julio Sarpi, who had lost his younger sister, Isabella, in 1971. Julio and Isabella were inseparable, constantly traveling and exploring the world. They went on an adventure one day, but Julio lost sight of his sister because he was distracted by something in the distance. She wandered into a tunnel and disappeared, captured by the monster. Julio fled in terror, fearing he would be the next victim, but he could never accept losing his sister. For 40 years, he was obsessed with the creature. Determined to figure out how to defeat it, Julio knew everything about the monster, which he dubbed the Night Wanderer. It appeared every 20 years, right before a lunar eclipse. Julio had set a trap and was prepared to fight, but he lost. The monster killed him. Nolan and Bess had previously discovered his skeleton. The group now understands that the Night Wanderer is a parasite that will never leave its victim. It bit Queenie and tasted her blood, implying that it will relentlessly pursue her, and she will never be free. Determined to finish what Julio started, the teens decide to stay in the maze and do everything they can to destroy the monster. With courage and a desire to honor Julio's legacy, the teenagers devise a strategy to capture the creature. They decide to turn off the lights and use Reggie as a decoy. Reggie settles into a chair surrounded by lights, ready to wait for the monster. When it gets close enough, Bess will start the generator, and Reggie will activate the light trap intended to destroy the creature. After thoroughly testing and rehearsing their strategy, the teens turn off the lights and prepare for the monster's arrival. They've considered every detail, so there should be no errors. But in the dark, fear sets in and Carl begins to panic. Doubt sets in as he wonders if their plan will actually work, but Nolan calms him down. A few tense minutes later, the monster emerges from the maze, drawn by the sound of the radio. It comes to a stop right in front of Reggie. He's ready to set off the light trap, but Bess has trouble turning on the generator. The creature moves closer to Reggie, ready to strike. Nolan realizes his friend is in danger and whistles to get the monster's attention. As the creature approaches Nolan, Bess yells, attempting to entice it away. When the creature enters the room that was Julio's office, Nolan activates the light, blasting it with powerful energy. Carl lunges at the creature, holding it back long enough for Bess and Queenie to escape the trap. The girls are able to escape and find an exit, but the monster is close behind. However, it cannot leave the tunnel while there is daylight outside. The creature retreats to avoid the sun's deadly rays. Soon the three boys emerge from the tunnel carrying torches and charge toward the monster, herding it into the trap. The creature is unable to escape, giving the teenagers the opportunity to set it on fire. The creature writhes and screams in pain as it burns. As the flames consume it, the teenagers celebrate their hard-fought victory. In that moment, they realize the answer to Old Joe's riddle is courage. It took courage to confront the monster, overcome every obstacle, and collaborate as a team. Only by confronting their fears and putting aside their differences were they able to defeat a stronger adversary. They return to town and try to explain everything to the police and their parents, but no one believes them. Despite their disbelief, the teenagers' bond grows stronger than ever. Later, police arrive at the tunnel to investigate the teens' claims. One skeptical officer goes down to investigate the area. He surveys the rooms and notices nothing unusual until his flashlight flickers and goes out. The detective hears the Night Wanderer's raspy breathing get closer. Before he can react, the creature appears behind him and launches a lethal attack.